There are tons of cool miniatures and characters for you to play as in Fallout Wasteland Warfare, from super mutant behemoths to Grognak the Barbarian. But what if there's a character that you want to play on the tabletop but they don't exist in the game? Well, you could wait and see if they ever get released, you could contact Modiphius and see if they bite, or you could create one. And today I'm going to show you how, using this, the Fallout Wasteland Warfare role-playing expansion. Now this book preceded the more recently released Fallout 2D20 tabletop RPG by a few years, and where the 2D20 version is a fully fledged pen and paper RPG, this is sort of a way to turn the tabletop miniature game that we know as Fallout Wasteland Warfare into an RPG experience. It uses the same systems and rules from Fallout Wasteland Warfare and morphs them into this hybrid wargame RPG experience where your unit cards are now glorified character sheets. You don't really see many people making a fuss about this expansion anymore, especially since the 2D20 RPG was released, but there's a lot of great info in here, from expanded lore to quite a few scenarios that can be ported over to the tabletop game. But what I'm interested in particular is this section right here on how to create a player character. And it's this system that we're going to use to create Butcher Pete, who you'll know from the songs in the Fallout games. And the process I'm going to go on is exactly the same as what you'll do at home if you want to create your own character. Now the songs that we hear in Fallout about Butcher Pete are really about how Pete is sleeping with pretty much every woman in town. Lyrics like "he's got a long, sharp knife" isn't talking about his extensive cutlery collection. But for the Butcher Pete we'll be creating here, we're going to take the lyrics more literally to create a knife-wielding butcher that will be a force to be reckoned with on the tabletop. Equally, I'll leave a link to where you can download my created Butcher Pete stats in the video description, but let's get stuck into the character creation. So the first thing we do when creating our character is we choose an archetype. Now there are a number of archetypes to choose from and cover a variety of character types that you may play as in the game, but it's not an exhaustive list. We know from the stories of Butcher Pete that he's pretty good with a knife, so I want to start with an archetype that already has a pretty good melee stat, which in this case is the Thug, whose melee is linked to their agility stat of 7. Now if we were playing this as an RPG expansion, there are some expertise skills that are linked to each of these archetypes that we'd get to assign to Butcher Pete for free. In the Thug's case, these would be acrobatics, deception, and the repair and craft of weapons and armor. But because we'll be primarily using Butcher Pete in the wargame setting, these don't really apply, so we'll skip over them and begin picking his gifts and scars. Now, gifts and scars are positive and negative character traits that our character has developed over their lifetime. Again, a lot of these apply to things that make more sense in an RPG setting, however there are quite a few that have relevance for the wargame. For instance, with Butcher Pete, I'm going to give him Gift of the Gab, which makes sense because he's a sweet talker, and this gives him +1 to his charisma. I'm equally going to give him the Bright-Eyed gift. He's always keeping an eye out for his next target, so this makes sense. It gives him +1 to perception. For his scars, Butcher Pete doesn't seem to be all there mentally. In the lyrics, he chopped up a ship, an electric chair, and a pulpit. So we're going to give him the Dullard scar, which lowers his intelligence by 1. And I'm equally going to give him Cursed, which lowers his luck by 1 too. Once that's done, the next thing to do in the character creation process is to spend 5 XP on perks and specialty skills. Now, I don't really have a need for specialty skills in the wargame, so we're just going to buy a perk called Blitz for Butcher Pete. This means that 1 melee attack per activation can be made at orange range for Butcher Pete. It still uses the melee attribute, but is made like a shooting attack. Pushback would still happen if it was meant to, but there'd be no follow-up, and Butcher Pete can even carry out a blitz while engaged to attack an enemy he's not engaged with. It's a pretty powerful ability for a melee-focused character like Pete, which will hopefully enable him to lock down sections of the table. Now there are a few more steps to making a character, especially if you want to be able to play with them in an RPG setting and in the wargame, but for the wargame, that's really all we need to do. All that's left is to mock up a quick unit card, and we're done. If you want to field my Butcher Pete in your games, you can get him at the link in the video description. If you do, tag me on Instagram, let me know what he was like to play. If you want to create your own characters and explore the RPG expansion, I'll leave a link for that in the video description as well. And feel free to use code TabletopHub to get 10% off your order. A little bit of your purchase will come here to the channel, help support me and my content. If you want to find out more about Fallout Wasteland Warfare, I've made quite a few videos on the game, which you can find by clicking here.